Welcome to Lecture 8, Logical Fallacies. Logical fallacies are thinking errors. They're boo-boos in our thinking, how our thinking process can go wrong. And we are all subject to logical fallacies, every single one of us, that we have to really be on the lookout for these things, and just in our everyday life we stumble across them and we're subject to them. When we're looking at critical thinking, we need to be aware of logical fallacies. We need to be aware of the errors in our thinking. In this quick little lecture, I am not going to cover all of the logical fallacies. There are many errors of thinking that we have. There are some very specific logical fallacies that are used. For example, there's specific logical fallacies for the criminals. Have you ever wondered, how could somebody steal? How could somebody kill? How could somebody rape? How could somebody commit whatever crime it is? When we look at the criminal aspect, there's some very specific criminal thinking errors, criminal logical fallacies. There is a whole group of logical fallacies that are used in marketing and advertising, where the marketers intentionally use thinking errors because they know that these are thinking errors that we are subject to, and so the marketers will intentionally use thinking errors. In this quick little lecture, I just want to cover some of these thinking errors. I'm going to start out with the appeal to authority. And this is when the experts are really not relevant on the topic. Appeal to the authority, do it because I said so. As well as a physician might be an expert on an illness, but they might not be expert on buying a car. So would you listen to a physician's advice about buying a car? A real estate individual might be an expert on real estate, and it might be a great idea to listen to them about real estate, but not such a good idea to listen to them about your health matters. So this is what we're looking at for appeal to authority, but it's also, is this authority a real authority? So if I ask a physician about my medical condition, that seems appropriate and that seems right, but sometimes I'm really not sure, maybe I don't trust this particular authority. It's time for me to get a second opinion from a different authority, from a different physician. When we look at advertisements, appeal to authority translates into appeal to celebrity. And that's why so many celebrities are actually out there endorsing, because it works. That we see the celebrity using it, whether they're an appropriate authority or not, we see that they're appropriate authority. The more we see them, the more they have authority. I have a nice little video for it, but I'm passing that by here. The post hoc ergo propter hoc. I love the name of that one. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. It literally means after, so therefore because of. That one event happened right after another event. That first event that happened must be the cause of the first one. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. This reminds me of a cool little story when I was a sophomore in high school. I was not a very good boy. I got called to the office many times. And I don't remember why, but this one time I got called to the office and I got scolded like you wouldn't believe. It's time for the parents to come in type of scolding. When I finally got out of that office, I was terrified. My mouth was dry. It was just, I was in sad shape. It had been like my third time to the office already that week. And the first thing I wanted to do was get a drink of water right after I got out of that office. So I walked out of the office and I walked over to the drinking fountain. And on the wall right above the drinking fountain was the school bell. And just as I bend down to push that button and I take the drink, as soon as I push that button, the school bell rang. And in my mind, I caused that school bell to ring. This is the post hoc ergo propter hoc. The thing that happened immediately before caused the other thing. It wasn't true that pushing the drinking fountain button actually caused the school bell to ring. It was just a simple coincidence that this occurred this way, but I put those together in my mind that I caused that drinking bell. I caused that school bell to ring, and I ran out of that building hoping nobody ever saw me. I was afraid of getting called back into that principal's office, and next thing the parents are coming to what's going on. We have a a very strong tendency to confuse causation with correlation. Causation and correlation. We have a tendency to think that because things happen about the same time, that one thing caused something else. And sometimes it's true that things happen about the same time, that one thing causes the other thing. But in reality, most things are correlated. They're not in a causal relationship. I remember many years ago, there was a news study that was talking about a study on gout. And the people who were studying gout were really trying to find all of the possible causes for gout. And one of the correlations they made was that the more bathrooms you have in your house, the more likely you are to get gout. And it was a simple correlation. It's one of those freak statistic things that occur, that people who have gout had a strong tendency to have a large number of bathrooms in their house compared to everybody else. And the news media picked this up and they left out the correlation part, and they put it in as a causation. That having 4 bathrooms in your house caused you to have gout. And the larger number of bathrooms you have in your house, the more likely you were to have gout. The news media picked it up and got confused between the causation and the correlation. Another causation-correlation confusion that has caused a lot of problems is the correlation between the diagnosis of autism and the time at which children get their vaccinations. And it just so happens that the age at which physicians are allowed to diagnose autism is about the same age that children get their vaccinations. And people put this correlation together, even though there is absolutely no effect whatsoever. And they put this correlation together and saying vaccinations cause autism. And that's absolutely untrue. Vaccinations do not cause autism. But this is a confusion between correlation and causation. Very, very similar to the post hoc ergo propter hoc. Okay, just talked about that one. And another video. There is another thinking error simply called special pleading. Special pleading is calling in the conspiracy theorists. My theory is not working because so-and-so is doing such and such to hinder me. That the medical profession is inhibiting the natural medicine people. That this is special pleading. That yes, there's all of this evidence against what my theory is, but I'm going to explain this evidence away. I'm going to explain it away in special pleading. We look at, when thinking errors, something called an ad hominem argument. An ad hominem argument literally means against the man. Against the man. This is where you have somebody's presenting you an argument, and their argument is really, really good. You have nothing to say against this argument, and so instead of attacking the argument, what you do is you attack the person. This would be an ad hominem argument. Ad hominem arguments are very, very close-minded. People aren't open and willing to listen to what the other side is. It also goes to closed-mindedness, is I'm not willing to listen to what you have to say about my argument. I'm just going to start insulting you that you're no good, you're part of the conspiracy, you're all sorts of stuff. They're saying that really the process of critical thinking, the process of scientific exploration does not apply to this. This is totally, absolutely special, and we throw in some special pleading in here as well. Poisoning the well is similar to ad hominem argument. Poisoning the well would be destroying the person even before they get into the argument. Yeah, don't listen to what so-and-so says because they're just a liar. I'm poisoning the well. Don't buy product X. Don't even try product X. Not because my product is so good, but because they're so bad. I'm looking at poisoning the well. And along this theme, one very similar to this is called the you-too argument. And this is, yes, my argument's not very good, but so isn't your argument's not very good either. So it's, I have problems and you have problems. It doesn't matter what those problems are. It doesn't matter that my problems are a whole lot more severe than your problems, but you have problems and I have problems, so we're both in the same thing. It's this U2 argument. When we look at arguments, we need to look at all of the evidence that's brought up. An argument for ignorance basically says, you can't prove me wrong, so therefore I must be right. You can't prove that mermaids do not exist, so mermaids do exist. You can't prove that aliens have never visited the Earth, and so therefore aliens must have visited the Earth. You can't prove that whatever it is doesn't work, isn't in existence, so therefore it must work, it must actually exist. This is where the argument for intelligent design comes in. This is arguments, a lot of conspiracy theories are this way. You can't prove this conspiracy theory, this conspiracy doesn't exist, so therefore this conspiracy must exist. What a lot of arguments for ignorance gets into is getting confused the unexplainable with the yet explained, or the unexplainable with the not yet explained. There's a lot of stuff out there in the world that simply is not yet explained, but that doesn't mean it's unexplainable. We're still working on a lot of stuff and trying to explain a lot of stuff. One of the thinking errors is called a false choice, or a false dichotomy, or stuck between a rock and a hard place. A false choice is one of the advertiser's favorite ones. Either you choose A or you choose B. We have this false choice. And in reality, there's usually more than one choice, or more than two choices. That not only do I have, I can choose Cheerios, but I could also choose Captain Crunch, and I could choose Grape Nuts, and I can choose Rice Krispies. I'm just not stuck between two choices. There's lots of different detergents out there. I'm just not choosing between these two different detergents. This is a false choice part of it. That anytime somebody only gives you two choices, they're trying to play on this thinking error of false choice or false dichotomy. One of the thinking errors that's frequently used, especially in pseudosciences, is moving the goalpost. Moving the goalpost would be demanding more and more and more and more evidence, never being satisfied with this is enough evidence for this. This evidence is showing, yes, this theory is correct, or this evidence is saying, no, this theory is incorrect. At some point there needs to be enough is enough, that I have enough evidence to show that people are not telepathic. There's lots and lots of evidence. But at some point, moving the goalpost is, no, I need a little bit more evidence, that I need a little bit more evidence, I need a little bit more evidence, I need a little bit more evidence. And that would be moving the goalpost. It's a very, very common one in conspiracy theories, a very, very common one in pseudoscience. A very common thinking error that many of us fall into is the slippery slope. The slippery slope can go positive or it can go negative. The slippery slope is if A happens, then B is going to happen, then C is going to happen, then D is going to happen, then E is going to happen, and finally F is going to be a catastrophe. This is the slippery slope. It's an argument that it may be true, may not be true, who really knows? It's an argument that right to bear arms people have. That if you take my assault rifle away, then the next step is you're going to take my hunting rifle away, then you're going to take my handgun away, and then you're going to take my butter knives away. So I'm going to lose all of my freedoms whatsoever. This is the slippery slope. If somebody dresses nice for class, then they must be a great person. If they're a great student, if they're a great student, then they must also be a great parent. If they're a great parent, they must, et cetera, et cetera. The slippery slope can actually go both ways. There is a thinking error that's very, very prevalent in advertising, and that is the false analogy. And this is an advertisement for PETA, the Persons for Ethical Treatment of Animals. If you get on the internet and you search for logical fallacies, you will pull up PETA ads right and left, because PETA is really good at giving great examples of thinking errors. Almost every ad is just full of thinking errors. And here, you have this young lady sitting there, and she's divided up into different parts. There's a round roast and a rump roast and a loin and a rib and a chuck roast, and here's the shoulder. But what this analogy is, and to me it's a really disgusting analogy, a woman is a cow. And to me that is an incredibly disgusting analogy. A woman is just a piece of meat. Now it does get its point across that eating a cow is a lot like eating a woman. And I wouldn't eat a woman. I wouldn't cook up her shoulder and have a nice shoulder roast. It gets its point across, but it gets its point across using thinking errors and not actual good logic what's going on. The straw man argument is an argument where your opponent has such a good argument you cannot argue against it. And so instead of arguing against it, what you do is you change the subject and you argue against something else. This one is very, very prevalent in politics. Politicians are great at changing the subject. A very famous example of this occurred during presidential debates with I think it was President Bush and Clinton that were debating. And a question was asked. The president got up and he answered an entirely different question. And the moderator at the time actually caught it. He caught that the president was trying to change subjects and throw in the straw man argument. And the moderator confronted the president and said, "Mr. President, excuse me, but this is not the question that you were asked." And he repeated the question. And the president got up once again and did a second straw man argument. And you could tell by the facial expression that the moderator did catch that the president did not answer the question. But I think, valuing his job, the moderator did not confront the president twice. This one happens in politics all the time. For example, somebody starts talking about the benefits of a healthcare plan. And then the next politician gets up and talks not about the healthcare plan, but about the financial aspects of the healthcare plan. So it's still basically on topic, but the focus of the argument has absolutely changed. We have a straw man. There's lots of other logical thinking errors, logical fallacies. One that's very prevalent in advertisement is appeal to emotions. This one's very, very prevalent in advertisement, that the advertisers are really trying to get you to feel a certain way. Because as human beings, we're really not all that logical, but we are very, very emotional beings. And if I can get you to feel a certain way about my product, then I can get you to buy my product. So many advertisements are really appeals to your emotions. And I do have several video examples to show, but unfortunately, because I don't hold the copyright of them, I cannot record them up and show them here in this little video. In our next lecture, we're going to be looking at cognitive biases.